I often get asked about the difference between the Russian kettlebell swing and the American kettlebell swing, which is the one we see normally in CrossFit competition. In the Russian kettlebell swing, the bell will be lifted only here, or here. When you do the American or CrossFit kettlebell swing, it goes above your head, so it goes from and go here. Now, the only reason why CrossFit started doing the American kettlebell swing is that for competition settings, it's easier to measure if a rep is a good rep or not, because you can give clear standards. The dumbbell must go over your head and the head goes through the window. So it's easy to measure if you get a good rep or a bad rep. The problem is that this kind of exercise defeats the purpose of the swing, which is simply to do a powerful hip hinge, not a shoulder exercise to finish the movement. Sure, you can argue that if you push really, really hard with your hips, you can create enough momentum to reach that position. But in most cases, people will have to rely from that portion on shoulder activity. And that's where the problem comes in. The first problem is that it can increase the risk of shoulder impingement. My wife herself injured her shoulder doing kettlebell swing during a CrossFit class because this is not a good position when you are narrow. And the problem is compounded by the fact that most people lack either the shoulder or thoracic mobility to reach that top position. So what they do is compensate by doing what I call, let's say, the exotic dancer posture. So they go here and then they do this. Bring forward, bring back here, lordosis, head forward, creating even more stress at the shoulder joint and cervical spine. Really, really bad. The other problem is that most people are not good at absorbing force. When you do the American kettlebell swing, the Russian kettlebell swing, the height is not super high. So you don't have that much force to absorb down. It's much easier, much simpler, and it's very easy to get into rhythm. When you bring the kettlebell up to here, there's a very long drop down, and it's very hard to coordinate between the fall of the arms and the hip hinge, because this is a short movement, this is a long movement. So most of the time you will see people do this, and then they are already here, and then boom, just the lower back takes all the shock. So it's really hard on the shoulder joint, can be hard on the lower back. Now you will argue, yeah, but that last portion where you actively use the shoulder, you can build your traps and delts. I will argue that in theory it's true, although there's no eccentric, so it doesn't build that much muscle. You can simply use Paul Carter's exercise of taking a dumbbell or a plate and just raising it slowly, under control, here. And what you do is, when you raise above the shoulder, you contract the traps to protect the shoulder joint against impingement. So that is a safer variation if what you want is to build the yoke area. As far as safety purposes, the American kettlebell swing will always be more dangerous and hazardous than the Russian kettlebell swing. And the only reason you should do it is if you are competing in a CrossFit competition and you need to reach the standards to get a good rep. But even if you do WOD, I still recommend doing only American kettlebell swings, even if you might want to go heavier because to compensate for the decrease in range of motion.